Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, December 15th, and this is the Hendrick-Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting, please? Can I get a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. The Hendrick-Hudson Board of Education will now convene in an executive session for the purposes of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to go into exec, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. We will be back in public session at approximately 7 p.m. Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, December 15th, and this is the Hendrick-Hudson School Board of Education's last public meeting for 2021. And we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The board has just completed their executive session and is now back in the public session. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please? So can I get a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Does anybody have anything they want to pull from the consent agenda this evening? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated? Motion. Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. That will bring us to our items removed from the consent agenda. This is usually a very nice section of the meeting because it is oftentimes donations, and tonight we do have 2 donations that were pulled from the consent agenda. One is a donation totaling $945 from the HHCEF to cover a portion of the brick wall, the memorial wall, tribute wall, that's the word I'm looking for, the tribute wall that needs to be repaired. So thank you to the HHCEF for maintaining this wall. It's a really lovely tribute wall. If you haven't seen it, there are names embossed all the way around. And the other donation we have this evening is a donation for $500 from Christine Schuster through the Bank of America Charitable Foundation, and that goes to benefit the students at the Blue Mountain Middle School. So thank you very much to Christine and Bank of America. Can I get a motion to approve those 2 donations?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That will now bring us to our superintendent's report.
Hey, good evening, everyone. 2 updates. First is a monthly update regarding preparations to implement the Princeton Plan, otherwise known as grade level banding. As the board knows, and certainly the community should know, that we are moving to a different elementary organization next year, where Frank G. Lindsay will house our district's kindergarten and first graders. Buchanan Verplank Elementary School will house our 2nd and 3rd, and Furnace Woods will house our 4th and 5th grade. This is a very big endeavor and initiative, and we've committed to providing the community an update monthly. After tonight's discussion, we'll update our website. We have a dedicated webpage to communicating with the public around our transition activities and timeline and such. So want to touch on a couple major points, and then certainly entertain questions. So the first big piece of planning for this move is preparing to move. We have a number of teachers that will be moving from one school to another, and we may have teachers who are not physically moving schools that will be moving potentially within the school building. Why is that? Because if I'm a kindergarten teacher at Frank G. Lindsay and I will remain a kindergarten teacher next year, that classroom may or may not be part of a kindergarten wing, depending on discussion with the prospective principal and their staff. So everyone may move. We certainly want to limit that. But at least 2/3 of our teachers will be moving from one school to the next, and so that process has begun. We've ordered boxes, we have provided them to teachers so they can begin to pack as they wish. Anthony Merlini and the team of head custodians are identifying different times and milestones throughout our school district where if teachers want to have some of their boxes moved from their classroom to either a holding facility would be in the school. Ultimately, Anthony and his team would then move them to the school that they're going to. With that, we've generated packing slips. So essentially each box will have specific information on the teacher's name, the school that they're moving from, and the school that they're moving to. So color-coded packing slips so that the custodians clearly know that certain materials and supplies are moving to a particular destination. We're encouraging teachers to pack as they go. So as they finish teaching their September or October modules or curriculum, they really have two decisions to make. What stays or what gets discarded, because in education we are really, really good at making sure our classrooms are museums of everything, all the resources we've always used. So there's a decision to be made over what they no longer need and a decision to be made on what they want to take with them. We're not making them pack at any particular time, but certainly it's easier to pack as they go and for them to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to need certain materials or resources for the rest of the academic year. Certainly workbooks and texts and certain materials are specific to curriculum that we teach at a particular time of the year, so if we can move that material as we go, that certainly is a goal. So they may begin packing, but that will really be up to them and to the resources that they need. Our custodians will store and move those materials, as I said, sort of a holding facility. So we may, as an interim, put some materials on a school stage or a room, classroom, or part of the school that's not being used for instruction. And then at key points throughout the year, Anthony and his team may move them from school A to school B. Those key times could be this holiday break, could also be February break, our spring break in April, and of course, over the summer. And lastly, in terms of preparing to move, the principals have visited and continue to visit their prospective school. Principals, nurses, secretaries have spent a lot of time in their new schools. They have their blueprint, they have their safety plan, they have met with the custodian of the other school, trying to get a lay for the land and understand all the intricacies of the schools that they'll be leading. They've also continued to meet both formally and informally with the principal of the school that they'll be going to understand some of the systems, because our three elementary schools were built at three different times in our history, and they are three completely different schools. Furnace Woods is on a cement pad, and the other schools are not. So there are some differences that happen, or there are some differences within the school that you need to spend some time and energy making sure you understand. In terms of staffing, that is our next major initiative. We are looking at our projected enrollment. Projected enrollment by grade level will drive how many class sections we have and how many teachers we need. So we have a board policy around class size. We have been reviewing our current enrollment and moving our current enrollment into next year's model. So we have rolled over all of the kids we have in K4 and have projected class size next year in the Princeton plan in grades 1 through 5. So we have a really good idea of how many students per grade level, how many teachers we'll need per grade level, and what the average class size will be. The unknown, of course, every year is kindergarten. Kindergarten registration is going to start in late January. We have identified and confirmed about 120 kindergartners right now, but the outreach will continue in terms of orientation, kinder camp, all of those things to make sure we try to identify as many kids that will join us in kindergarten next year. Of course, there are families that are moving into the district and moving out of the district, but kindergarten is always the unknown really until after school starts, especially for families who can't close on their home until after school starts, or families who forgot to register their children and they see the bus drive by a few times. So we have a really good handle on estimated staffing based on enrollment from our current K to 4th grade that will be transitioned into the 3 schools by grade level. We also have February 1st retirement notice. By February, the retirement notice is the last day of January, but February 1, we will know with a pretty good level of certainty teachers that have indicated that they will retire at the end of the year. That also will drive, won't drive staffing, but it will drive the particular staff that will be with us next year. If we have certain teachers who retire at the elementary level, we need to determine if they need to be replaced or not. But that will also help us identify our staffing needs for next year. After we meet those key milestones, then Margaret and Lisa and the elementary principals can start to determine which particular teacher will be teaching which particular grade level and in which school. That's really important, going back to the previous slide, because now our teachers know where they're going. Not only where they're going by school, but where they will what classroom they will be physically teaching out of. That's really important to know so that the prospective principal can say, okay, this is my 4th grade wing, this is my 5th grade wing, so on and so forth. We can start to build some schedules around collaboration and having teams within the grade level. And that's a really important thing that teachers want to know. They want to know what school they're going to, and then they want to know what their classroom is. And they will go and they will measure, and they will make sure that their desks can be organized in certain ways, or what personal belongings they may be able to bring in, or where their reading centers will be, or will they want to have their laptop cart. That's a really big deal because that's their second home, and for many people it's their first home because we spend oftentimes more time in our schools and classrooms than not. And with that is regular communication with our teachers union. The teachers union contract spells out very, very clearly the process for moving teachers, what the priorities are in terms of seniority and experience, and those are conversations that we have been having with HHEA almost weekly to make sure that everyone understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that it complies with the contract language. With that, we have been using our early release days for our current staff to start meeting and planning with their colleagues in their prospective school. So we've had a number of early release days so far this young school year. We have many more coming, and those have been dedicated at the elementary level to those teachers coming together to collaborate, to talk about with their principal what they want their environment to look like. It doesn't happen often in public education that you get to really start over within the same district. And for our 3 principals, because they all are moving to 3 different buildings, and because they will no longer be a principal of a K-5, but 2 grade levels, it's new to them, and it's going to be new to the teachers that end up moving. Almost every teacher will have a new principal, but certainly will be in a new building. So they're having discussions around what they want their climate and culture to be, common language, what they value. Certainly these conversations started with some icebreakers and getting to know each other and start to build that family feel. With that, the 3 prospective schools, Margaret and Lisa have set up opportunities for them to visit with other schools that are banded in similar fashion. Whether they're banded 2 grade levels at a time, or a K-3 and a 4-5, or you name it. The idea is to learn as much as we can to plan in advance and identify some best practices and also some potential pitfalls to avoid. These meetings are with schools not only in our backyard or in Westchester County, but as far as Western New York. Because they are organized in similar fashion, and we want to learn what works and what doesn't. We want to accentuate the positive and make sure we avoid some things that they have indicated we should avoid. With that, as we are focused on the future, these groups are also very cognizant that they want to honor the past, and they want to make sure that each school gets a proper send-off. So all of the principals are working with their PTAs to honor decades, half a century more, of a model that we've had in our district that we're moving away from. So they will propose a series of recommendations with their PTA. This will include ice cream socials, it will include bringing back alumni, it can include open house with parents and barbecues, and everything is on the table right now because they want to make sure that we're not just 100% focused on next year, but that we take a moment to reflect. That's really important to that group. With that, and partnering with the PTA, I'll speak in a little bit, are plans for students and parents. Opportunities for parents to get into the new school, see the classroom, understand the layout, know where to park, know what the pick-up and drop-off customs will be, and also meet their new principal. So part of the time that the group is spending together in early release days are to make sure that we have some operational opportunities to work with parents and, of course, students on the operations end. And also this group is proposing making sure they have time to come together as a new faculty in the summer. Again, to continue the work that they've begun during early release days, because in the summer is when it's real. People are going to be moved in, they're going to be ready to go, and then we start focusing on opening day. And we have fallen into a routine of having staff come back at least 2 days before we open school right after Labor Day. We may need to make adjustments to that calendar to provide some more time for the elementary folks to come together to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. One of the big ticket items that I know parents are interested in is transportation. And I know we've said this before, but it's worth repeating. Start and end times for the 3 schools next year will remain unchanged. All right? Furnace Woods will start and end a little bit earlier, the school for 4th and 5th grade. That will be a huge relief to some families that will have a student going to Furnace Woods and have a student going to any of the other elementary schools, because that bus will come a little bit earlier. Our policy is that students, at least in 4th and 5th grade, can wait for the bus by themselves and be dropped off by themselves, so trying to demonstrate a little more independence. Furnace Woods, so the 4th and 5th graders, will have their own bus. What that means is the buses will travel the district for that Furnace Woods pickup and drop off separately. So that bus will only have 4th and 5th grade students on it, all right? Which means the buses for Frank G and BV, K1 and 2-3, will only have kindergartners through 3rd graders on it, all right? So there will not be buses with kindergartners and 4th or 5th graders. They will be separate now because they're going to separate schools. So we will have a bus run that will pick up students around the district that will go to Frank G and BV in the morning. And in the afternoon, those buses will be separate. So there'll be a group of buses that will pick up our kindergartners and 1st graders at Frank G, and they will send them home. There will be buses that pick up our 2nd and 3rd graders at BV and send those kids home. As opposed to in the morning, if where I live, you could have kindergartners and 3rd graders on the bus that would drop kids off at Frank G and then the BV, or vice versa. In the afternoon, they are on a direct flight home. So afternoon bus rides will be shorter than morning bus rides, which lead us to bus rides. The estimated bus rides right now are under, or we're looking to make sure bus rides are under 40 minutes. There are some outliers, and Liz and the transportation team are going to look at those outliers in mid-January and propose some alternatives, and that could be vans or small buses that will pick up, rather than 40 or 50 kids on a bus, it may pick up a dozen of students that live in some of the corners of our district, and we'll be able to get those kids to school much quicker. So our goal is 40 minutes, and every route that our computer system generates over 40 minutes is going to be adjusted if possible. And lastly, this is important as well. Almost all of our children will have a new bus stop because their bus is going to a different destination and may pick them up and drop them off at a different time. We heard last year concerns that bus rides might be an hour or an hour and 20 minutes, and that is not the case and won't be the case. However, the fewer bus stops that we have, the quicker and more efficient our bus ride is. So part of planning the logistics of picking kids up and dropping them off at school is to try to condense bus stops so we have fewer opportunities to stop and go, so that the bus ride can be quicker. Now, that does not mean that students who live on Albany Post Road are going to be crossing that road or walking down Watch Hill without a sidewalk. That is not what that means. What it does mean is that in certain neighborhoods that have very low traffic or that are neighborhoods and not cut-throughs, students may have to walk down a couple driveways to get on a stop or get on the bus with other kids, rather than some of the benefits we've been able to afford where every child has their own stop at the end of the driveway. So those will be evaluated as well. That's Liz's project in January. And lastly, supporting parents. We work with our elementary PTAs to send out a survey to elementary parents. And I hope that our elementary parents take the time to respond to that survey. That survey was completely authored by the PTAs. What we had said was, here's the information we want to know from parents so we can plan some FAQs, some Q&A sessions, and identify some resources to support parents if they have questions or concerns about transitions or how are we going to support students moving from school A to school B. So the PTA sent out that survey. We have well over 1,000 elementary parents. About a week ago, I believe the elementary PTAs received 87 surveys now. So we want to make sure that parents take the time to complete it. It's an open-ended survey. It is not a point and click. It is not pre-slugged. So it is, for a parent taking the survey, we need a little detail from them, and maybe that's why we have a low response rate. But we did not want to have the appearance of leading anyone's responses, by having them check something. We wanted them to be able to input it themselves. But we have a pretty low response rate. I know it's the holidays and everyone's going a little crazy, but that feedback will help drive some of our initiatives to help parents and do some more outreach with them after the new year. So I hope that they can do that. I think the survey closes next week. It's been out for almost a month, I believe. And part of what we'll do with that, depending on what the feedback or input includes, is being able to line up parents with other parents that are in the grade banded school. I know that talking to one of our principals, talking to some of the PTAs today, the PTA leaders have been meeting together to talk about how they will organize next year. And they have been meeting with PTAs in other grade banded schools. And the conversation always gets to, well, what's your experience and what do you think, and so on and so forth. And, so there have been a lot of really good organic discussions of other parents who are in this model talking to ours and giving them some very direct feedback and suggestions. So we want to continue that. We want to continue to partner with other schools. As I said earlier, Margaret and Lisa have reached out to schools across the state that are organized by grade level. We may go back to them and ask them if our parents can speak to some of their parents, because as we're concerned, or as a parent is concerned of a child going from school A to school B and eventually school C, there are schools who have perfected that model and perfected that support who have been in that model as long as we have been in ours. So the whole idea is to identify some best practice and find folks who live it every day to give not only our teachers and our leaders, but certainly our parents some suggestions. So our next steps, one of the board goals this year was to make sure we have this conversation and updates at a board meeting. So we'll come back in January. We'll have some news in terms of what class sizes will look like, number of teachers per section. In January, we'll give you an update on the move and we'll give you an update on some of the priorities that came from the PTA survey and what our plans are to address some of the questions and concerns that come from that document and that outreach.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions from the board trustees? Yes, Ally.
Do we have any idea how Mother Connection is going to work?
That's a really good question. We don't know. I know that they are working with the Westchester Child Care Council, which is their accreditation. They may need to fill out paperwork to be organized a little bit differently because I think they're credentialed to have certain, a wider span of students from ages 5 to 10 or K to 5. I know when I spoke with their director a couple weeks ago, she and her board were actually going through the decision-making process of how they wanted to be organized. We told them that if they chose to organize, have a K-5 program in all 3 of the schools, we may be able to support transportation. The iffy piece is what happens at Furnace Woods because Furnace Woods instruction starts earlier. But that is, we will continue to provide them space, but I don't know how they'll organize themselves or staff it.
But
It's on the radar.
okay.
Yes.
And because it's a priority and it's for many families, that's the only way they can make the before and after school care a priority. So as long as it's on our radar screen, so we can make it happen for families.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bill?
Joe, you mentioned that the bus routes were going to be 2 schools delivering the students at the same time to both the K through 3. But then on the way home, it'll be 2 separate bus runs, individual for each school. What is the cause or rationale of that? Because you think what's efficient for one would be efficient for the other. So I'm just curious, what's the rationale or the cause for that?
The rationale is when the buses leave the Furnace Woods drop-off, they can begin the pickup for the 2 other schools. So the buses that drop off at Furnace Woods are already on the eastern part of our district. They'll start picking up the K through 3. So you don't have 2 buses going through the same neighborhood to pick up K1 only and then 2, 3. So we have a little more efficiency with our buses in the morning. And if we have 40 children on a bus coming from the eastern part of our district near the middle school, let's say, they would, depending on the route, depending on the logistics or what the computer system suggests, they may drop off the K1 at Frank G first and then drive 5 more minutes and do the 2, 3 or vice versa. On the way home, it was quicker to get the kids home directly from the school and not do that switch, not do 10 buses leaving Frank G and going to BV and vice versa. Because usually putting kids on the bus, especially that age, can take anywhere between 12 and 18 minutes. And so the last thing we wanted was to have 5 and 6-year-olds on a bus any longer than necessary, just waiting for more kids to get on. Also, it's quicker in terms of time because those buses we need for athletics. So we've got to get those buses back to the yard because we need some buses for after-school programs, but those drivers are also our custodians to finish their routines in the school to wrap up the day. So getting off the bus is much quicker than putting kids on the bus in the afternoon.
I'm glad we're going to be able to do that, because I know it was a priority for parents to get their kids home as early as possible for after-school activities also.
Correct.
Alexis?
I don't know that this is necessarily a question, more of a statement or a concern, but on the way in, I assume that we're going to figure out a system so that the children are getting off at the correct locations and that we don't lose a little 5-year-old getting off at BV and they should be at FGL. I don't know that should fall solely on the bus driver, We've got a lot to.
Yeah, Liz is on that. She's talked to her transportation friends in other districts that are organized this way. I should have mentioned, she's doing her best practice research as well. And I don't want to speak for her, and I know she hasn't made a decision. She'll consult with the principals. But yeah, they'll have different, like, color-coded tags, a laminated tag that, you know, is on their zipper, or some way to identify them, what school they go to in the morning, or what stop that they get off at. Absolutely.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Lisa?
I was just wondering, Joe, what the plans were for meetings with parents to help inform them of these changes and to provide them an opportunity to ask questions as well.
Yeah, in working with the elementary PTAs, this was a discussion we started with them in the spring, revisited in the summer, and then came together in mid-October for the survey. We agreed that we would let that survey drive the interest, and then we would plan meetings either at the elementary schools, virtually, I guess, right now, to do Q&As, or also produce FAQs and save the time we spent with each other to do a Q&A or address some of their concerns. So we know what the interests or some of the concerns were last year. We want to compare that to see if that's still a priority this year, but we're going to use those survey results. That is why it was important on the PTA. The PTA believed it was important for that survey to be open-ended, so that any and all concerns can be voiced and not just directed, you know, or pushed, so we could have a faster analysis. But that will drive the content of what those discussions are. And, you know, there'll be questions around special ed or curriculum instruction, transportation, and like we did last year, we'll have our department leaders there to be able to articulate the vision.
Jen, do you have any questions at the moment?
No, I think most of our questions are good.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Okay, the next update is under Superintendent's Report, is building used by outside agencies. This has been a discussion with that we have been having with our outside agencies, and certainly we have received and fielded a few questions. I'll start this discussion by going all the way back to September, I guess the executive order that the Department of Health placed on school districts, that everyone in the school district, teacher, staff member, student, and visitors must be masked, must adhere to social distancing, all of those things. Last year, we essentially shut our schools to outside agencies for a number of reasons. One, we didn't have, we had very strict cleaning protocols. Our middle school and high school, those two schools are used the most. We're operating in a hybrid model where it was really important that kids came 2 days at a time and that we thoroughly cleaned all the instructional spaces. And we were not in a position last year to add to our costs, our labor costs, by having custodians work overtime, additional cleaning, those sort of things. This year, we wanted to provide the opportunity for agencies to use our facilities within reason. So that includes the town of Cortland, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. You guys know who we approved because it's an action of the board. In order for us to move forward, recommending to the board that they use our facilities, our facilities team either meets or has a discussion with those agencies and says, look, these are the rules of the school that are upon us by the Department of Health. And you have to assure us that you will follow these rules or enforce them. Otherwise, we can't have you in our facilities for all the reasons I just mentioned. So oftentimes, while that conversation starts with us because we are responsible and accountable to make sure that any visitor that we lend our space to is following those, sometimes there's an agreement between us, and I'll use the town of Cortland, for example. Town of Cortland youth basketball, it was agreed that only students would enter the school for purposes of practice and that adults wouldn't. Why was that agreed to? That was agreed to make sure that we didn't have parents, not by choice, but maybe by mistake or happenstance, wandering around the school, not being in the right place at the right time. Also trying to limit the exposure or location of where the agencies are using our facilities to make sure Anthony doesn't have to tell his custodians to go back through and clean everything again or incur overtime costs. The other reason is safety and security. Before the pandemic, and I know it feels like decades ago, the Board of Education in our community supported an $18.5 million capital project, a vast majority of which were around safety and security measures in our facilities. So much so that at that time, the board moved its board meetings to the lower level of the district office to make sure we had a single point of entry, to make sure that folks coming to a board meeting couldn't leave and meander around the building for safety and security reasons. So when we approve an outside agency using our facilities, there is a negotiation because we need to be sure that they will be able to manage and implement those mandates. The other piece is contact tracing. If someone were to test positive, the school district is responsible and accountable to coordinate or participate in contact tracing. And if we can't assure or have, if we don't have an idea, or let's say the town of Cortland doesn't have assurances of who is in our facility and who is not, and at what time, that's a health risk. And so those are some very significant mitigating factors and layers that go into our thinking. We haven't denied anybody, but we have said to them that they have to be able to enforce this and ensure that they can account for people who are in our facility, they'd be able to account for contact tracing, they would be able to enforce and supervise adults or children, making sure that they follow Department of Health mandates. So I know there were some questions about who makes that determination and who doesn't. We make the determination because there are facilities, and those decisions are driven by the Department of Health mandates. So I wanted to make sure we...
There's been a lot of questions
Yeah.
about that lately. Does anybody have any questions about outside agency use of our facilities? All right. Do you have anything else? Because your team have anything else?
Anything else, folks? Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to Anthony, who is going to do our presentation on the energy performance contract with EPC.
So I want to set this up to, it's not as much a reminder for the board as it is the community who's with us and watching on TV and who may watch this again. One of our cost savings measures initiated last year that the board asked us to look into is how can we streamline our operations costs. We spend a lot of money on the physical plant. Anthony will come back to us later in the winter with his budget, and it will be very thorough, how much we spend on gas, electricity, all of those things. And so the board, as we were contemplating life after Indian Point and contemplating some very major decisions, the board said we need a pathway to control some of our fixed costs. Fortunately for us, our district has routinely engaged in an energy performance contract. We're going to briefly tell you what that is and then give you an update. But last spring, the board asked us to start to endeavor down this road. This is about a 6-month update because we have begun that project. We wanted to let the board know where we are, but the community especially. The reason is because we have an opportunity under this energy performance contract to guarantee savings in upwards of $3 million over the next decade plus by making a strategic investment in some of our district's infrastructure across our 5 schools. In order to do that, one of 2 things have to happen. The board will need to approve it because it basically is a multi-million-dollar capital project that will guarantee savings down the road. And if we want our public to approve it with our budget approval in May, we could receive an additional up to 10% funding from the state in order to incentivize us to invest in our infrastructure that will guarantee lower fixed costs over the next decade. It's an incentive program from New York State. School districts are encouraged to entertain this, to go green, to be more efficient, and ultimately lower the burden on taxpayers so that we don't have increasing or escalating fixed costs to operate the plant when we may have an opportunity to reduce them by investing in some of our infrastructure. So I know the board is well versed in it. Majority of our board were here last May. I know Jen, one of our new board members, sits on our facilities committee that talked about this in some pretty good detail last month. But we want to make sure that the community understands, because we may have an opportunity for the community to vote on this so we can receive a free 10% incentive revenue in order to experience more savings and to reduce the burden on taxpayers. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anthony. You can walk us through, give us an overview of what this is and walk us through some of the financial calculations, and then we'll tell you next steps and have a Q&A.
Good evening, everyone. Like Joe said, we discussed this back in May, last spring, for an energy performance contract, EPC for short, I'll give it all. Catch you up to speed, we went out to several firms to solicit bids for them to come back with us what they thought would be some energy saving measures, what they found for the buildings, and what they thought where we can incentivize and we can cut our utility costs. Two firms came back to us. They gave us their proposals. We had meetings with them. We sat down with them, went over everything that they had, and we determined that the best of the two that we liked was day automation. So we're carrying forward with day automation. I think a while ago we guys approved a letter of intent to carry on with day automation. So that's where we are now. So right now, day automation is going through the building. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these slides and bring up to speed a little bit about what an energy performance contract is, where we are in the scheme of things, and where we'll progress over the next several months.
Great. Greg,
So-
can you just turn the volume up a little bit? I don't know if everybody else can hear well, but I'm having a little trouble.
So this is an alternative means of funding building improvement at no cost or no outlay impact to the district. And the way it gets repaid is through those savings, and those savings are guaranteed. So we upgraded equipment and building environments inside the building. It expands the amount of work done in the district. We can do a lot of different things. Coordinates with our capital project plan. So we can align this with some of our capital improvements that we want to do throughout the district. And some of those things that we can do are some, lighting upgrades, HVAC upgrades, ventilation things of that nature, and efficiencies in the building, which will improve the environment of the building, but at the same time save on utility costs. So it checks both those boxes. So that's how we align it with the capital project plan, and we can take some of those things. It's paid from the existing budget operating funds. There's no bond, as Joe was saying before. And then we have the option to vote for that extra 10% aid. Qualifies for energy incentives. So there's other incentives that we can get sometimes from some of these other agencies that are out there. And our day automation, we'll see if there's anything like, if there's any solar rebates, if there's any electrical rebates, or things like that we can also tie into this. And it qualifies for state building. And then the performances and the savings are guaranteed. And what that means is that every year they do a measures and values, and they come through the building, and the company comes back through after all the measures are in place, and they do a report. They check our data, and they go over our utility costs, what they were the year before, and they data log them for where they are now. And so they go through that, and they make sure that they are saving us those values, and we are saving money through all that. And they do all that, and write up a report at the end. So they guarantee, and they have to meet that. It's one of the criteria of doing an energy performance contract. So current status and timeline. Day automation, I meet with them. I just had a meeting with them again today to review and identify energy saving measures. We went over a couple different things, and every time we speak, we find something else, or we come up with a different idea. And currently, they're going through the buildings, performing their energy audit. So they're going through and they're looking at lighting, We're looking at what potentials for lighting upgrades we have. I've asked them to look at ventilation. If you remember, we had some issues with our BMS in the beginning of the school year. So they're looking at upgrading the BMS, which is the building management system. Building management system controls our ventilation, controls our heating, controls our cooling, and things that are exhausting and things of that nature inside the building. We're looking to move to a more efficient platform within the Andover system. So they're going to evaluate that and see how we can move from one to the better, to the newer version. The last version we have is back from when we did the original energy performance contract, and beyond that, which is back in 2009. So we're looking at come to a more web-based product. The energy audit is, like if you watch the timeline, you see 1222, we're going through that now. Next month, we'll be reviewing the scope of the architecture and engineering firm. And then sometime in March, the AE firm will design. And at the same time, simultaneously, we'll be recommending measures and meetings, and we'll be going over submissions and documentation that we have to send up to SED for verification. The SED will review it sometime in June, and we're looking to do our construction, this is saying February of next year, actually 2023. We have the ability to do some of this work during the school year, because some of it's lighting upgrades, some of it's ventilation upgrades, and some of these things can be done and they'll work second shift. They'll come in after hours. We did it before with our last energy performance contract, where the contractor came at night. He would select a couple of rooms, they would do what they have to do, clean up and everything be ready for the next morning when the staff and students return to the building. And it seemed seamless, that nobody was aware that we were in, except for when you come in, you have newer, brighter lights, so you would visually see it. But in terms of the rest of it, you wouldn't realize that we were there. So we've been able to do that in the past. I think they pushed out the construction far. We can do a third-party review. We did that one time before, which sped up the SED approval process. So we're also going to look at that, and that cost gets tied into the cost of this into this. So it's all built into that, so we don't have to pay on the outside for the third party. It's all built into the energy performance contract. So, but that is a measure that we have used in the past. It was effective, and we'll see into that whenever we can do that. And if SED gets more staff, it also may push up the timeline for approval process as well. So right now, I think they have a conservative of February of 2023. So some of the energy conservation measures, and I touched on a little bit of it. Lighting, we're looking to upgrade the classrooms on the exterior of the building and the interior of the building to LED. When we did the last energy performance contract, we went to T12 bulbs, T8 bulbs. We increased our savings and we cut our electrical bill drastically. We've done some LED lighting upgrades throughout the district already, and we were able to save money with those as well. So I'm optimistic with converting over to LED that this would be a great savings, and the LED technology has come a long way from what it was back when we were back in the earlier years. They're going to do a couple of mock-up classrooms with the lighting, so this way it's not just, hey Anthony, this is what we did, this is what you got. No, they're going to come in and do a couple of classrooms. I'll sit down with them, pick up a couple of classrooms. I think we're going to do something maybe at Blue Mountain, and I think it's something at BB or something of that nature, so that we can see it and we can decide yay or nay, what we like, what we don't like, and then do a mock-up. So it's not just having a box and we just don't have any say in the matter. So they're going to come through and they're going to vet all the vet all the pieces of the puzzle, all the equipment and everything like that. So very nice. Lighting controls, we have occupancy sensors now in a lot of our rooms, but they're going to add more where we're missing, where they're failing, or we're going to look in also schemes for the classrooms as well, making sure that the light is casting in the right direction, it's getting enough light where it needs to be. We have a lot of peripherals now with smart boards and things of that nature. Is there a way that the front of the room is maybe dim when we're using that so you can see the board better? Or is it how the light casts and things of that nature? So again, with that mock-up, we'll be able to look at that and also be able to determine what's the best scheme for that room. And sometimes they can do some things with switching. So like if you have 3 or 4 different rows of lighting. They can put 2 on one switch, 2 on the other switch, depending on where it is, to change it up as well. So we're going to look at all those alternatives when we do lighting. Building envelope, usually for weatherization, the doors and the door seals to see if we have any cracks where air is getting into the building, or heat or cooling is leaving the building, coming into the building. Air sealing insulation of windows. I've asked them to look at a couple of buildings for windows to make sure that they have the right values on them, and if there's an opportunity. Windows don't always have the same rate of return as lighting. Lighting has a larger rate of return on it. Windows don't always have the same return on it, so they have to look at everything backwards. Building management system with the BMS, which I talked about earlier. We're going to look at upgrading that as well. We have an aging control system. We've had some issues with it over the years. We'll look at adding demand control ventilation. We'll look at all these systems, even though they have either demand control ventilation, there's overrides on the damper controls and things like that, which is a little far in the weeds, but there's all these different things that you can override. You can change depending on what's transpiring inside the building. With the building management system, I can also check temperatures inside of the buildings from my desk, so I can see what's transpiring in some of the classrooms. We're looking at adding other telemetry into the classroom, and we can see other values inside the classroom, which would give us an indication of how well or poorly the ventilation is working inside the space or inside the building. So we can view that from a desktop, so that when we have issues inside the building, or someone's complaining about an issue inside the building, either I can see it or my head custodians can see it from my desk, and I can say, okay, I can see that there is definitely a problem in there, and I can research it and I come back inside the building. So it gives us another measure, and with the web-based program, I can see it from home, I can see it if I'm at a conference, wherever I am on a laptop, I can pull it up and I can look inside the building. So it makes it a lot easier to check things. Mechanical system upgrades. We're looking at some rooftop units with some replacement or some upgrades. We have some aging units. We also have some aging pumps and other instruments that we use for equipment inside of our buildings. So we're looking at that. Some ventilation improvements we're looking at, changing the airflow in some of the buildings. I've asked them to specifically look at Blue Mountain Middle School. I know we've always had issue with the shoulder months there, with the heat attenuation in the building, especially in the spring and the fall, and the shoulder months, like I said, you'll get some stagnant air or you'll get some dead air inside the building, so we're looking to make some improvements there if possible. So I asked them to specifically look at that building. Again, it's a multi-level building. As you get to the upper floors, it gets warmer on those upper floors. So I know that's always been a concern of mine and a concern of the public and the staff, so I think if this is an opportunity, we can see what we can do there. Steam traps, upgrades and improvements at Frank G. Lindsay. That building heating system runs on steam, so we have steam traps inside that building. So they're going to look at those as well, making those more efficient, cleaning those out and repairing those, and just makes the system that much more efficient. Electrical system upgrades, motor efficiency and variable frequency drives. Helps on your power loads and things like that, because it's ramping up the motors instead of just throwing on the motors all at once, which takes a big draw on your system. So your electric and demand costs go higher. So the more you can have variable frequency drives to ramp up those motors, turn them on and off at a slower speed, helps out overall. Renewable energy, we're looking at solar. I know we have the 5 buildings on solar already, but it's something we always try to look for another opportunity where we can do some solar, where we can do battery storage, or anything like that. I don't know that we'll be able to do it in this program, but it's something that's out there, so we need to look at all avenues of saving utility costs. The next slide shows an example of the financial data, and it gives you an idea of, if you had a potential project size of $2.2 million, and the payback is 18 years. With the district data on the side shows you have about $460,000 in utility costs, 30% energy savings, building age of 50%, and then it goes through the numbers on the right-hand side. Your guaranteed annual energy savings, about $145,000, grants and incentives, $60,000, annual project cost, $210,000, ongoing services, $10,000, that would be for measurements and values, building aid $95,000, annual net benefit $80,000 in the first year. So an 18-year cumulative, I mean, net benefit will be 1.43 million. So it gives you an idea of how the numbers go. Next slide is like almost like a shoots and ladders slide or something. But it gives you an idea of the timeline and the process that we would go through and the time frame that it takes. This is a generic one, so it gives you, without throwing dates on it, it gives you an idea of how all these different things take. This, process development, procurement, letter of intent, couple of weeks, SED, kickoff meeting, and your detailed energy audit, another, say 8 weeks, and then finalize your project scope, and then your legal review, board updates, project design, submission to SED, and your SED approval. You can see that that's your longest thing, about 14 weeks, and again, that moves back and forth. Final SED approval, reviewing finances, construction and commissioning, about 10 to 12 months, your guarantee, and your ongoing partnership with your company that you select. So, kind of just goes through all the process. Some of the benefits, and I think we touched on them a little bit. The lead capital project, of course, significant improvements to mechanical and electrical systems, improved lighting and control. We have to upgrade our building management system, qualifies for aid and incentives, turnkey installation. No change orders because it's all done. These are guaranteed costs, these are guaranteed whatever, so you take the change orders out of it, whatever they tell you it's going to be, that's what it is. The costs go up for them, and there's some issue wherever, that's the project, that's the cost they have to do it. So, one nice part about it is that they do it, they hire all the contractors, they're in control of all the contractors, they oversee the contractors, do the construction administration for the contractors. They let us know what's going on, I can verify what's going on, I go out in the field, check on things, check on their progress, we have progress meetings, so we're still in control of everything. But it's kind of like they're responsible for it, and they're making sure that everything is getting done on time. If there are issues, we can make corrective actions, we can voice our opinion. It's not like we don't have a say at that point in time. We can still say, go into that project meeting and say, look, you're not meeting milestones, we're not happy with the way these workers are performing, or they're not cleaning up after themselves. We still have a little say about that, so it's not like we're out of it. The long-term commitment to performance and guaranteed performance and savings through the energy performance contract, and in accordance with that other slide, it gives you kind of like, where you're going to be, and you're saving money through the utility costs. So whatever you're saving in electrical, whatever you're saving in gas, whatever you're saving in oil, those are the numbers that you're saving in those utility costs. Where you're I'll ramble down there really fast, so.
Thank you. It seems that one of the slides was missing in the presentation that we had here, so we'll be sure that it's on the board docs by tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
For anybody who wants to see that. Does anybody have any questions about the EPC? Bill?
You made reference to doing these before. How many has the district done while you've been here so far?
And only one in 2009.
Okay.
And that's used as the baseline. So in 2009, we did an energy performance contract that was guaranteed to save you X amount of dollars, and this is our utility costs. When they come and do the next one, it sits on top. If they don't use this as our energy savings anymore, this one will sit on top of the old one. So the cost savings goes from here up. It doesn't take, let's just say we're saving 20 and they say we'll save you 80. They don't have to save us 60. They still have to save us 80 on top of the 20.
Now, do you remember how big, dollar-wise, that energy performance contract was back
I
then?
want to say about 2.5 million, 2.2 million.
It's a similar size to what we're talking about now. And would you say that was successful?
Yeah.
And that was also a community vote, and did we have a successful vote on that one to get the additional funding, state aid?
I'm not sure if we did the additional vote, because I think of the timing of it, I don't think we had enough time to get the additional vote. So I think because it was the first one and we were trying to get it done, we didn't have the time sequencing.
Okay.
So we just went out and forego the 10%.
Okay.
So it's like, I think we've been talking about before and everything, our aid, going up and potentially going up. So what Joe was saying before is that we have the potential with anyone closing and now to really do a bigger energy performance contract and to get more cost savings or more cost benefit, I should say, because if we go to a 10% building aid to like a 30 or 40% building aid, that's going to increase the size of the project and the scope of the project. So if we get 30 or 40 and then we add another 10 on top of that, we're now at like 40, 50%. So it really becomes a nice sized project to get that extra 10%. So that's why we're trying to get ahead of it now. We're trying to get the public and you guys as much information as we can so we can work this on.
Okay, thank you.
I was just wondering, Anthony, where we are on the little chutes and ladders chart right about now. Are we doing the detailed energy audit still? Are we doing project scope at this point? Where are we?
We're still in the midst of the detailed energy audit.
Okay. Okay. And then the other question I had was, do like electric buses qualify for anything with this, or is that just, it's only facilities?
Yeah, it's only facilities. I think that's something on the outside, and I know Enrique and Liz have been looking into, because there are grants and things of that nature for that. There's a lot of push to get school districts to try to involve in that electric bus process. So yeah, they're looking at those, but I don't.
But that's
this
not
is all
part of this.
facilities.
This is just facilities. Okay, that's what I was wondering. And then the other question, maybe this is for Joe. Okay. I mean, maybe you can tell me if it is or not, I guess. I was just wondering what that vote on the 10% would look like. Would that be, the public approves, I don't know, is there an amount of money that they're approving, or is it just to go forward with this, or?
Well,
That's what I'm kind of confused.
I don't want to speak at the schools, so, whatever, but I believe we're doing EPC no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then we're allowing the public to vote for the 10%. So whether we get that or not, we're still doing EPC.
So they're not voting to approve a certain amount of money then? They're just.
They're approving that if they approve the 10, we're going to do larger scale projects. Does that make sense? Or?
10% of what? The additional 10% of the 2.2?
Well, so I guess it works with the building aid.
Okay.
So let's just say, it's 2.2. So if you're going to do, you're going to do 30% more or 10% more, it's going to be only because, another $200,000 that you're going to be able to do renovation.
Thank you.
So when they present the options that are out there, is it kind of like you would pick and choose the benefits that work best for our district? Like, they come back and say, we could do VMS, lighting, steam traps, we could do all these, but you'll sit down with them and you'll pick and choose what best fits our district's needs at that.
Right, and like I was saying earlier, there's certain measures that have better rate of return on them.
Okay.
So lighting, right off the bat, that's like one of the things that drives the whole project.
Okay.
So without the lighting, you probably wouldn't be able to do a lot of the other, you're gonna be doing that. But all the small ones, let's just say we had a rooftop unit at one of the buildings. And he's like, yeah, but it's really not gonna be rate of return, but I can squeeze that in. It's almost like, when you watch some of these things and you can pick, you can have this, you can have this, and this will give you this, and this will give you that, And with this, you'll be able to look at it and see which one's more effective, number one, which one's going to be easier for me to do by having an outside contractor do it, and I won't be able to, and then the other ones I can do out of my capital, my budget. You know what I mean? So it just works out better having them do it because they have control over it. We're doing this anyway, it fits better into this, and that one, I'll just do it.
Okay. So when the community votes on the 10%, are we going to present to them what they're getting for that 10%? I guess we get this extra 10%. If you vote yes to this 10%, we're going to get a BMS system, which we wouldn't have.
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
basically, you have your baseline project, assuming that we would never put it up for vote, or assuming that we wouldn't get the 10%, and then the plus 10% here are all the additional things we can get by riding along that resolution with the general budget in May.
All right, yeah, that's, I just wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
So that proposition, it would be a separate proposition for the full 2.2 or whatever the full amount of that project is. They're not voting on a 220,000 at 10%, they're voting on the 2.2 million.
Correct, because we could do the project on our own. We could ask the public to approve the additional 10%. If they do, that's great. If they don't, we can still do the original project without that 10%.
Does anybody else have questions? All right, thank you, Anthony. If you guys will allow me, I would like to slightly alter the agenda and just have the Facilities Committee do their report now, since we have Anthony with us, in case there's anything he needs to comment on. Facilities had a meeting a couple weeks ago. Was there anything else you wanted to tell us, or just wanted to be sure before we lose this moment?
We did meet, I think we mentioned that at a previous board meeting, and we knew that a presentation was coming up, I think on January 5th. Our next board meeting, Anthony's going to be back to see us again to present on all things facilities. And I think it would be, better off to wait for that to know what's going on, because there's a lot of things in transition since our committee meeting, which is a good thing that things are consistently moving. But I think the information in that meeting is somewhat outdated at this point. But that a lot of things were considered, discussed in that meeting, how things are going, progressing with doors, for security reason, for the security at the entrances, the auditoriums, both at the middle school, high school, the BV, cafeteria, auditorium. A lot of things were discussed, but I think a lot of things have changed since that committee meeting, and the committee is going to be meeting again before. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we're in the process of scheduling it before that January 5th, so we can all be on the same page for the January 5th presentation.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you. We'll have things to work up a little bit then too, better in place. All right, so thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our first audience comments section, which is audience comments on agenda items. Carmen, do we have anybody sign up for agenda items today?
Do you want to read your statement? Do you want to read the statement?
What?
Do you want to read your
I
statement?
will, yes, if someone's going to comment. then
Yes, we have one audience comment. Turns out.
Okay, so, because we feel community engagement is important, the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment during this portion of the meeting. To maintain an orderly meeting, the board has allotted 15 minutes for each public comments period, which may be extended by board consensus. Guidelines for those wishing to address the board are as follows. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to the public comment section and will be called in order in which they have signed up. We would ask that groups designate one individual to speak on their behalf. It is not permitted to cede your time to another speaker. When called, please step up to the podium and begin by stating your name and affiliation if applicable. Letters, petitions, or other written material should be handed to the district clerk prior to your comments. All comments must be directed to the board. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. The board vice president, Lisa, will be timing comments and will give a 30-second warning to the speaker with a yellow card and indicate when the speaker's time is finished with a red card. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to participants wishing to speak on varied topics, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Although we take personnel concerns and individual student matters very seriously, the board is not permitted to address those in open session as per state and federal privacy laws. So we would ask that you use appropriate administrative channels for these items. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner so that our meeting can serve as a model of appropriate civil discourse for our students. In the event the meeting becomes unruly, the board may need to recess the meeting until order can be restored. Please remember, if you prefer not to participate in the public comment section of the meeting, written comments to the Board of Education may be submitted in lieu of speaking. We do read all of those comments. Please see the agenda or the district website for contact information. We will now begin our public comment period on agenda items only.
Our first speaker tonight is Stephanie Hickey.
Oh, Ms. Hickey, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to speak at the last meeting. I'm glad to see you again tonight.
I have a comment about the Princeton plan. I looked over the board docs, the presentation you have. I wanted to know, Mrs. Roller, maybe you can answer this, what we're going to use to measure the success. I know what model we have now. I know the cost and benefits of that model. Are we going to use test scores, maybe increase reading scores, increase math scores? Are we going to have more specials? Maybe a dual language program like Peekskill has with their Princeton plan? I just want to know how we're going to measure it. Because I know the move looks to be a lot, and I see that you're on point with the move. It looks like you're very organized in the teachers. Maybe we even measure community and parent involvement. So I know another parent had the same concerns at another meeting that I was at. I would have liked to see that in the presentation. So we do have a definitive metric. So we, as a community, know that it was successful. And one more other thing about the survey. I'm on the strategic planning committee. I asked a couple people for interviews for the survey. I got one person to interview. Here's the problem with your surveys. We never get the results. The Princeton Plan survey, that was a Google form. Your results are populated in graph format. Where's the graph format for each question? Where's the Google Sheet? All these surveys that you give the community, we never see the results. So that's your low turnout for surveys. Why? I mean, I went to a couple people and said, can I interview you? And they're like, why? We never get to see it. You're not going to get the community to fill out surveys when we never see the results. I would like to see the Princeton Plan survey that was given before the model was approved. I want to see those results. You have them. I would like them put in the board docs so the community can see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hickey. There will be continued presentations on the Princeton Plan implementation going forward, as you know. And there is a plan presentation for a strategic plan at the January 5th meeting.
But can we get those results inside the board docs so the community can see it? It might make them actually fill out another survey. They may be more apt to fill it out if they see what the results are.
Thank you. There was only one speaker, correct?
Unfortunately, this gentleman would like to speak, but we didn't sign
Okay,
up in
that's
time.
fine. Of course. Step on up.
Hi, my name is Chris Bealoff. I'm a parent. I've lived here all my life. I'm only speaking because I heard the superintendent speak about the basketball, and that was a question of mine. And it's ironic that I was here before talking about masks, and this is related to masks too, but the email that I just got today referencing masks, coming to the meeting, referencing Title NYCRR 2.60, it actually said for the last time that I was here that you didn't need to wear a mask while you were playing a wind instrument. Part of that thing. But back to what the superintendent was talking about with the town and basketball within the schools and stuff. My question came up is, I already have security concerns that I've seen. I mean, do we have problems in the past with parents dropping their kids off at local schools with any problems with securities? Because if you've been actually wandering off and stuff, have you been to a Boy Scout a meeting compared to a basketball practice? at BV, because I'll tell you, at a Boy Scout meeting, there's kids wandering and people are everywhere. But if you're at a basketball practice, I mean, you're confined to the gym because you want to be there with your child and help them, I mean, with basketball, you know what I mean, to be there. I'm a single dad. I like to be there and a part of my kids as much as I can. But the question that came up to me that didn't make sense to me is that you had a practice, I had to drop my son off at a practice and let him go inside and then come back and pick him up later. So, I mean, that's just one team practicing in the gym that I couldn't be a part of. But it didn't make sense to me that 3 people could go to a game and 2 teams are playing, so you have 3 times as many people there. It just didn't make sense to me. So I was just looking for like some clarification so I'm not looking for any answers because I know that's not part of it and I don't want to give them time or whatever, but just wanted you to voice my opinion to see where I'm coming from. If it doesn't make sense, I got a question. And the mask thing, I get it. I mean, we all have to do masks. I mean, it's not just me and my family. I mean, you're looking out for the whole entire community and the schools and everything. I mean, I get it. But if it doesn't make sense, I mean, I had a question. So some of the things that the superintendent brought up with the security, contact tracing, I mean, how are you going to contact trace them at a game? You know, compared to practicing and dropping off. My whole issue was just dropping my son off, and it didn't make sense to me that I couldn't go in there with 5 people, coach or whatever, and having the whole gym to ourselves. Compared to the game, it just didn't make sense. So, anyway, that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I would suggest you speak with Mr. Hockhardt. I'm sure he would be happy to have a conversation with you in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, the only reason I'll speak, I wasn't going to speak tonight. I understand.
Thank you. That's just the 2, correct? All right, so that brings us, thank you. So that brings us to our committee reports. Were there any other committee reports for this week? Okay, do we have any board comments or new business?
Sorry. I wanted to discuss with the board the possibility of bringing presentations of principals to the board meetings in light of the fact that many of us as parents haven't been in schools. I know a lot of activities are still going on, and it would be nice to share some of the good things going on, such as the Blue Mountain Middle School music yesterday or last night. I think the high school's having chorus tonight. Just some of the activities that are still going on, and also just talk to the principals of how kids are doing in school, and competing with COVID and still managing. So, wanted your opinion on what you guys thought.
Sure. Lisa and I were talking today actually with Joe about scheduling a retreat in January so that we can discuss what kind of presentations we want in the spring going forward, or the second half of the year, and how we feel we're doing as a board, and also make sure that we're on track with our initiatives. So I think that would be a great time to discuss that, and the rest of the board can think about that as well. In the meanwhile, yeah.
I actually, I love that idea, Jen, because I know that a lot of times as community members, we're not connected to the people that are leading our buildings, but also as parents, we really only know the leader of our child's building. And I think it's great timing for something like this with Princeton Plan happening, because it would allow people to experience all of our wonderful principals and leaders. So it could be an awesome way to just get a little insight on their style, who they are,
and we've certainly done that in the past. Prior to COVID, we would have students come in and do presentations, and the principals come in, and some of the teachers come in and do presentations. And unfortunately, the past year, we haven't been able to do that. And this fall, so far, our atmosphere at our meetings have not really been conducive to having guest speakers in. And I'm hoping that we can do more of that in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I think it would bring positive to these meetings for sure.
Yeah, I for one missed out.
Until we make a decision as a board, you can always attend a PTA meeting. I know every PTA meeting I've ever attended, they have a principal's report where they talk about what's going on in their building. So that's always a good way for parents, just as a friendly reminder, to connect with your school.
And you don't have to be a member of that school to go to the PTA meeting either. They're generally open to any PTA member. So if you have an elementary school kid who's maybe 4th or 5th grade and going to the middle school, you could join their PTA and start going to middle school PTA meetings and get a little feel for what the middle school is like, or the high school, or whatever. It's not really limited to that particular thing, but that is a great way to get updates. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll talk about it during our retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll give everybody a chance to think about what kind of ideas they want to.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any board comments or new business? All right, so that brings us to our second audience comment section, which is our non-agenda items. And the same rules apply as prior. I won't read that whole long statement again. Do we have any speakers?
We do.
And our first speaker is?
Mrs. Michelle Morata.
Thank you, Ms. Marenka.
Hi, I'm Michelle Maranaka. I'm the mother of 3 children in the district, a senior, a sophomore, and a 3rd grader. I did send a letter last week in to the board, Mr. Hoffreiter and Mr. Mackin, that I wanted to bring up and mention this evening. This was in regards to Mrs. Barthelmess's extended absence.
I'm sorry, we can't discuss personnel matters in the public.
I'm not asking why she was out. I really want to know about the replacement and the lack of instruction that has happened in her absence. What I really want to know is what we're doing to fix this issue. Why the sub position was not posted for about 5 weeks after her absence started.
I'm sorry, these are all personnel issues, and we can get someone in contact with you.
Okay, well, I think the fact that we've had no teacher in these classes for 2 months is just unacceptable as a school district. I'm not asking for the whys, I'm asking for what we're doing to fix the problem. So how are our kids going to be educated in these classes to continue?
All right, Mr.
We have your
Hoffreiter.
contact info?
Yes.
I'll leave
And
that.
it's also in my email that I sent last week.
Oh, yeah, we have it already. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
Mrs. Hickey, Stephanie Hickey would like to have non-agenda.
Non-agenda item as well?
I'm not agenda.
Good evening, Ms. Hickey.
You know, I'm sitting up here, and I was here last week, and I've been coming, and I want to say that there's an adversarial relationship that you have with the community. And I don't really think that you know how bad it's really getting, and I tried to warn you about that a couple meetings ago. Last week, when someone spoke, I don't know the name of the man, and he spoke about the mask mandate, and he went, the people who are watching at home, there were 6 people in the audience. He was back there. He was more than 12 feet away from you. It was at the end of the meeting. There was only, I think, 2 other people signed up to speak. You got up and you left. And then you left the administration here. And Mrs. Roller, the administration was doing exactly what you were doing. They were, I cannot believe that I even have to listen to this. Why is this lady even talking? Mr. Catalan actually was laughing at the man when you left.
Excuse me, Ms. Hickey, you're making this very personal.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Specific individual.
Okay, but I have a video of him because I was sitting in the audience. I won't say a name. An administrator was, you guys were over there. He was laughing at the man that was in the audience. He was going on. The other 2 administrators had left. I'm telling you, it was so, I'm speaking to you guys as human beings. It was wrong. I'm a teacher. Parents come to me, and sometimes they say things that I completely disagree with. If I laughed in their face, I could be fired or put on disciplinary action. You know what? I learned something sitting at that meeting, and I hope you guys learn it. Even if someone says something that you don't agree with, There's something in it that you can take away from it. You don't have to agree with it. There are things that the administration here says, and then sometimes I just open my mind, and it's okay. I learned something and I say, okay, that's why you're doing it. Some of the presentations you've done, I've come in here with a closed mind, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I didn't think about it that way. But to be dismissive, disrespectful, laughing, your own code of conduct to the school students talks about how you want them to have tolerance for people. You're talking about in this meeting, you want to model to the students what they should be like. I don't see that. And I gotta tell you, I don't think you're doing it on purpose. I mean, no one would do this on purpose. Your board members are all looking at me, not the administration. And I can save you a ton of money on consulting fees. You don't have to hire another consultant. Fix the problem in this room, and it's not with you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Hickey. And thank you for being open-minded when you come to the meetings. All right, so that brings us to the, oh, do we have any more speakers? I think you said there was just one.
We have no more speakers.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of our meeting. This is our last meeting for 2021. Our next scheduled meeting is January 5th, 2022. Have a good end of the year and a happy new year, and we will see you in January. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye.